we got Andrew, who's calling in from Maine. Andrew, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi, yeah, I just kind of had a reaction to hearing the last call. I mean, you read what I said, but yeah, basically, I just think people might be reading too much into this bill, and like it's about sexuality in general. It doesn't, single out one or the other. So it seems kind of weird that people would have such a strange desire for young kids to be like. I didn't have sex ed until like 8th grade. I think that's probably a normal age for a lot of people.
Sure.
I don't know. I just feel like there's an overreaction. So I guess that's what I was saying.
Well, again, the bill doesn't say it's going to have sex ed for elementary school kids, right? What it's talking about is sexual orientation and different gender identities are going to be part of that curriculum at earlier ages. So why it's important is because it means that even if you have a comprehensive sex education plan at 8th grade, let's say you're in the 8th grade and you're in Florida and you're ready, you can't talk about gay people. Like, that's what it's saying. You can't, it has to pretend like they don't exist as a peoples. And that's why that's a problem.
I don't know if that's actually what it says. I think it's just more of the age restriction. I don't think it's actually saying gay people don't exist. I'm pretty sure that's not what's in the bill.
Well, I have a question, Andrew. So when do you start, say in Florida or wherever in Maine, what grade or what age do you start learning math?
Ooh. Interesting.
Learning math, you said?
Yeah.
I don't know, like very young, obviously, kindergarten or something. I mean,
right.
I don't agree. Okay.
So what is the difference between what's the difference between learning math, learning biology, learning geography or history, and learning sexual health or sex ed?
Because because math is a fairly objective thing, and as you said, there's a lot of baggage with sexuality. It's very much linked to people's emotions and their bodies, which aren't anywhere near developed in many cases, not all cases.
Right. So I'm not saying that we dive into I'm not saying that curriculum should dive into hardcore advanced sex ed stuff when children are in grade 1. But I mean, I think it's a travesty that sex ed is not even addressed until, grade 8, for example. Like, some kids have been having their period for potentially a couple of years by the time they get to grade 8. Okay. And don't you think that maybe that sort of thing would be a lot less frightening if those children knew what was coming, and that's the sort of thing that would be handled in sex ed?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess this brings up another question of, I think in a lot of cases, things to do with sex can be very personal. So that is why people think that it should be at the first level handled by the family. And obviously not all families are good at that or whatever, but I mean, it's not, I don't really see it as especially a public school's duty to teach people about their own, I don't know, because math is an objective, detached academic thing. Sex is not.
There are objective facts about human reproduction and human sexuality as well.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a scientific fact that there are heterosexual people, and it's a scientific fact that there are homosexual people, and it's a scientific fact that there are people in between.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a scientific fact that some people have penises and testes, and some people have vaginas and vulvas and ovaries. So I don't know. These are all scientific facts. So why can't we teach them?
Well, I'm not saying you can't teach them. I'm just saying it might be a little.
Why can't the public school teach them?
Yeah, the bill is saying you can't. Yeah, go ahead.
Why can't the public school teach them?
No. So let me get the quote here. It says it prohibits classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity. Right, and
unless it's age appropriate.
That is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with the state standards, right? So kindergarten through third grade is completely banned. Okay. Everything after that, it does. Here's the problem with the bill. It doesn't give a specific age as to when it's appropriate. It does not say this is now the age when it's appropriate. So any school system can use that and say none of the ages are appropriate and don't teach it at all. Like it's the workarounds with this bill that are really part of the problem.
And frankly, I mean, I don't see what's age inappropriate about acknowledging the fact that gay people exist.
Yeah, or sexual orientations exist.
Yes, exactly. Sexual orientations exist.
I mean, it's kind of a heavy thing, and I don't think younger kids have the.
Why is it a heavy thing?
I mean, I had sex ed when I was in 7th grade. You know, that was, and I learned all about what happens during sex. I mean, what the actual organs of sexual reproduction are for, right? Like, if anything, that's the appropriate time to know that other sexual orientations exist and other expressions of gender identity exist. Not to mention for the fact that obviously gay kids exist, but also trans kids exist too. And if they don't have, you know, on top of it being not allowing, on top of it being like almost anti-speech in a way, saying that you can't teach these things, it's also symbolic because it's also like just not giving the acknowledgement that these communities are real and exist as well in the classroom, because we've been teaching straight sex since as long as sex ed has been a thing in schools, right? We've talked about the purpose of that, and obviously
but probably not even that well, right?
Yeah,
like
probably not
like
even that well, but
like Andrew, what do you think is so? If I think back to when I went through sex ed, before we actually had sex ed, there were a lot of rumors and whisperings and vague ideas about what went on and what this big secret was that everyone was keeping from us. And it led to a lot of misinformation. So do you think that it's better? Like, do you think, Andrew, it would be better if we let the teachers deliver actual facts before the rumors snuck in? Or should we be focusing all of our sex ed in like 7th or 8th grade on just busting all these myths that people have built up over the previous years?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
because they're getting exposed to sex in some ways. And I don't understand why you would want it to happen like in the day-to-day life and the rumor mill and all that stuff, instead of in like a controlled environment and a relatively safe environment where you know they're going to get good information.
It's true.
Well, that's part of what I'm saying, is that I don't think it's a groundbreaking issue one way or the other, the specific age, as long as it's not super, super young. My main thing is it does leave the door open to, you know, address orientation and things after 3rd grade. So, I mean, I just think...
No, it doesn't.
I guess you're right.
Yes,
it does.
That's the problem. It says up until age appropriate. They can make it so that they never teach it at all. There's no requirement for them to teach it.
Say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say that it can be abused, but I mean, technically the door is open. But I mean, again, like people are, you must not be worried about people knowing about it, because it's like it's the information age. I mean, people can access all sorts of information no matter what, like you just said, about anything you want. So
there's also millions of Americans that believe that the election was stolen, and they use their access sources of information to figure that out. You know, like just because we have access doesn't mean we know how to specifically use those tools. And plus, we're talking about like kids here as well. We're not talking about grown adults with jobs. We're talking about people who are learning about this stuff for the first time, who need that basis to kind of figure this stuff out, right? And let's be real, teenagers have sex. Like, that's part of why sex ed was a thing, because teenagers are having sex, and if they're going to have sex, they need to have that better education and understanding of it, including sex that is not heteronormative or involves other, you know, people, places, and things.
Yeah.
I mean, I just I'm not against sex ed. I just think I guess if it were to be abused, that would be bad. But I'm just saying, I think the huge uproar is kind of, I just think it might be an overreaction. Like, I don't know if you just are anticipating everybody abusing this, like, throughout the entire state, or I don't know. It's, and again, like the parent, like people will be exposed to these ideas beforehand. It's not like they're going to be, it's not like they're going to hear it for the first time in a classroom. So
Andrew, why do you think that this legislation was needed in the first place?
Yeah.
Why do I think it was needed? I don't even know if I think it was 100% needed, but I'm just saying.
Right. So why does it it seems like, again, I heard about this for the first time this evening, but I don't understand why you would need something like this unless you're planning to use it or planning to abuse it in the way that we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. It's like,
well, I do think that, I guess now that you mention it, I do think you can, by kind of going too hard on these ideas, you can kind of dampen or ruin someone's younger childhood years where they might not be able to enjoy just being a child as much. So I do think with the whole push to make people aware, it has been getting younger and younger. So I do see it as protecting children in some way, and there is value in that. So I guess
why do you think that children are going to be harmed by having more information?
Well, I mean, it's just, especially if you haven't gone through puberty, it's just not super relevant. And it's just, go play with your friends, go do your sports.
But don't you think it would be puberty is a very scary time for everyone, probably. Your body's going through changes. And if you don't understand why or what's happening, then that's even more scary.
Yeah.
Don't you think it would be perhaps less distressful if everyone in the class knew, oh, they're going through puberty. I get it. That's why they're, acting differently or looking differently or whatever. Maybe that would garner a little bit more empathy in classmates instead of it, people becoming targets of bullying and abuse or something. I just don't buy this idea that children are these precious, delicate things, and you can't mention the word sex or anything related to sex or even the hormones involved in our natural human bodies. And the shyness that our society has around these discussions with children leads to some really bad things, right? You can think of examples of child abuse where children don't know what's happening and they don't know what's wrong when they've been sexually abused, and they don't know how to communicate what happened because no one's given them the jargon or the words to explain what happened. I just don't buy that you're doing anyone any favors by not educating them.
Yeah.
Even at the second grade, you don't have. I started shaving my mustache in 5th grade, so you don't have to tell me about that. And people made fun. So I understand.
And I started having crushes on girls in 2nd grade, and Tim was having crushes on boys in 1st grade. And when Tim was having crushes, he didn't know how to deal with that because he didn't live in a society that validated that, right? That didn't say that was okay. So I want to live in a society that does say that's okay. That says yes, you are okay in this. This is natural. This is normal, and you're fine. And I'd rather kids have that protection.
Knowledge is power, and if you want to destroy fear, then you want to inform people about what is going to happen.
Again, I agree that people obviously should be made aware. I don't know. I guess abuse would be bad. I guess maybe I don't see all the schools in Florida abusing it. Maybe I'm wrong, but is it? I just kind of, to me, it seems like kind of an overreaction. I don't know.
You got to look at. There's a lot of bad actors at play here that have been trying to make this bill happen for a long time. There is a entire lobby of people who have been supporting this bill, and they are not pro-trans. They are not pro-LGBT or T, in any sense of the word. You should be suspect to see why. It's the same stuff with creationism in schools. There's lots of groups that, and this is the exact same problem. Yeah, even though you can teach evolution right now in public schools, how many public schools don't do it? How many public schools are still not following the current science and even throwing ideas out? There's lawsuits happening about that stuff all the time. So it's going to happen with this too. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. The whole, I guess the bigger issue is just in general trying to control what people think. You can't control what people think. All you can do is expose them to ideas and let them make their own conclusions.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess I see that a lot with this whole debate. And, you know, for me, I see it more on the left side of politics, but it's just like, I hate the efforts to control what people think. It's just like, expose them to the ideas and let them make their own conclusions. And as long as they don't break any laws or anything, I mean,
we understand like, this bill is controlling what people can say in schools, right? It's saying that they can't teach it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that, which is why I said I'm not 100% one side or the other. I think there's points on both sides. I don't know, but to me, it's just like people are like, oh, it's the end of the world. It's like, no, like you can get this information in many other places. It's not like you're going to have a blank mind about this.
And again, I have to say, I don't know if every second grader that is experiencing feelings like that can and does that, or any elementary schooler for that matter, or any younger kid. Like I get that there are ways you can do it, but that access is, I mean, it should come from your school first. I should learn my knowledge from school before I have to look it up from the internet. Like, I just think as a general policy, that's a good idea. But anyway, Andrew, I'm sorry, we gotta move on because we gotta get to some of the callers here. But I do appreciate you calling in with your opinion and your thoughts on stuff. Thanks so much for contributing to the show, and I hope you have a good night. Any other thoughts on that, MD?
No, I mean, I just don't. I think that this is one of the unquestioned assumptions of our society, is that there are things that children must be shielded from, knowledge that should be forbidden to children for whatever reason. And I think we frankly don't give kids enough credit, and that they can psychologically handle a lot more than people think.
Absolutely.
Being scarred or harmed or whatever.
I as someone who has spent time in his career working with children, kids, first of all, kids are savages. All right. They know way more than you think and way more than you'd want them to know, but they know, not all the time, of course. And for the ones that don't know, we have to give them the tools to figure that stuff out. And again, it's like, I don't want my kids to have to figure this out because, oh, the internet says they're okay, but not their school. Like, what?
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, like, I'll tell you a story real quick.
Yeah.
I've done rotations at the pediatric hospital, the local pediatric hospital. So I've had to do operations on children. And the rule for consent, for getting consent for a procedure, is if the child can reasonably make the decision, you assess their capacity to make the decision. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what their numerical age is. You do it based on their ability to understand the decision. So I've had conversations with like 8 or 10-year-olds where I say, look, you have an infection in your appendix and it's making you sick. But what we usually do is we do an operation where we put a little cut in you and we take out the appendix. And these kids go, yeah, that makes sense. I think we should do that. And you're like, this is more of a mature conversation than I've had with some adults, right? It's like, and the kids totally understand. And yet we're saying, you know, they can consent to having this operation, but they can't like learn about their body below the waist sort of thing. Like, this is very, I just find it very strange.
Yeah. There is America is, we love violence and we have a weird relationship with sex. It's like, when it comes to learning about it, there's just weird taboos around it. But when it comes to putting it in movies and all kinds of stuff, we're totally okay with it. It's very strange. There's a lot of Puritan cultural values. Similar. But a lot of Puritan cultural values that affect that thinking